The series begins by showing an American man named Daryl Dixon who is tied up on a boat, drifting at sea until Daryl washes ashore on a beach in France. Surviving the ordeal, Daryl searches for drinking water to quench his thirst and then walks through a nearby village that appears to have been abandoned by its inhabitants. At that time, the world is known to be plagued by a zombie outbreak, causing many casualties and chaos in various countries. After walking a considerable distance, Daryl finds a boat by the riverbank, so he searches for any remaining food supplies on the boat. In addition to finding some food, Daryl also discovers a photo of a family that was presumably going on a trip, as well as a map. Planning to return to America, Daryl starts studying the map he found to locate the nearest port, which happens to be in southern France. With this in mind, Daryl decides to begin his long journey south the next day. The following day, Daryl prepares all his supplies and takes a moment to record his final message on a tape recorder. Shortly after, Daryl begins his journey towards southern Paris. During the journey, Daryl sees dozens of zombie corpses lying around in various places. A few hours later, Daryl arrives at an abandoned supermarket building, intending to find any food supplies still fit for consumption. Entering the building, Daryl readies a spear, prepared for any sudden zombie attacks that might lurk inside. As expected, a few zombies suddenly attack him, forcing Daryl to fight them off. Daryl successfully defeats the zombies, although his arm gets injured by one of the zombies that grabbed him. The zombies in this place are known as burners because they have been exposed to high radiation, causing them to burn human skin with their touch. Daryl decides to continue his journey despite the pain in his arm. Several times, Daryl is seen pouring water on his burn wound to alleviate the pain in his skin. When Daryl reaches the area around Marseille, he notices a woman following him, but he doesn't mind and soon ignores her, feeling that she poses no threat. Upon arriving in front of an old house, Daryl sees a woman and a blind old man named Maribel and Guillaume who appear to be preparing to leave. As Daryl approaches them, he accidentally steps on a zombie trap, alerting Maribel and Guillaume to his presence. Daryl then tries to talk and expresses his intention to trade some medicine he carries for a few of Maribel's apples. Daryl and Maribel begin to barter until two armed men suddenly arrive and point their guns at Daryl, intending to take the food Maribel has. Seeing the men momentarily distracted, Daryl seizes the opportunity to attack and incapacitate them one by one. As a result of the fight, Daryl is injured and asks Maribel for the medicine he had previously traded. Guillaume, overhearing this, unexpectedly strikes Daryl, rendering him unconscious because they were only pretending to be blind to deceive others. Guillaume and Maribel quickly leave, taking the food and medicine they had obtained. From a distance, the woman who had been following Daryl approaches him as he lies unconscious. When Daryl awakens, he finds himself in a monastery being treated by the nuns who reside there. Daryl is quite surprised to see the nuns deliberately burning his arm, which had been injured from a zombie's touch, as part of their treatment. The next morning, Daryl is approached by one of the nuns named Isabel, the woman who had been following him since the previous day. Isabel then explains that she knew Daryl's arm injury was caused by an attack from mutated zombie burners, and that is why the nuns deliberately burned the injured part of his arm to stop the infection. During their conversation, Isabel introduces her monastery community called Union de l'Espoir, or Union of Hope. Later, as Daryl feels better, he decides to clean himself up. When Isabel checks on him, she expresses happiness at his arrival since the monastery had not received any visitors for a long time. After Daryl freshens up, Isabel takes him on a tour of the monastery, explaining the details about the nuns' residence. Besides the worship and living areas, the monastery also has an armory that was used during World War II. Additionally, Isabel also mentions that the monastery is protecting a boy named Laurent from a group called Pouvoir de Vivants, who had previously attacked him. The Union de l'Espoir believes Laurent is the Messiah who will save humanity, so the nuns are determined to protect him. During their conversation, the head nun signals Isabel to speak with her, prompting Isabel to leave and meet with the head nun, while Daryl begins to enjoy the meal prepared by her. The head nun expresses her concern about Isabel bringing a stranger into the monastery. However, Isabel tries to reassure the head nun that Daryl is a good person, especially since she has been following and observing him for some time. On the other hand, Daryl, still exploring the monastery, is approached by Laurent, who invites him to chat in a corner of the monastery. Meanwhile, Maribel and Guillaume, continuing their journey, are suddenly confronted by the Pouvoir de Vivants group, seeking revenge for the deaths of two of their members who were killed by Daryl. Without hesitation, a man named Cadron kills Guillaume, whom he believes was responsible for his comrade's death, and demands Maribel explain what happened to his group members. Back at the monastery, Daryl, still with Laurent, is shocked to see a zombie priest confined within the monastery. Daryl questions the nun's decision to keep the zombie there, as its presence poses a threat to their lives. Sensing something strange happening at the monastery, Daryl decides to leave and continue his journey to southern Paris. When Isabel learns of Daryl's plan, she tries to dissuade him, explaining that she has been waiting for Daryl's arrival for a long time. According to a prophecy, Daryl is destined to come to the monastery to take Laurent to the Nest, a safe haven from zombies and criminal groups in France. Isabel also tells him about Laurent's special role in bringing hope to save humanity from extinction. Despite this, Daryl remains determined to leave the monastery. Meanwhile, Maribel, fearing for her life, decides to show Cadron a place where his group members were killed by Daryl. Upon discovering that one of his members, who is his younger brother, has turned into a zombie, Cadron becomes furious. Determined to find Daryl, who killed his brother, Cadron and his men search for clues about Daryl's whereabouts. Finding a poster belonging to Isabel left at the scene, Cadron and his group head to the monastery to search for Daryl. A short while later, Daryl, having left the monastery and continued his journey, spots Cadron's armed group heading towards the monastery, causing him to worry about the nuns. Meanwhile, Cadron and his men request permission from the nuns to enter the monastery to search for the American who might be hiding there. Out of fear, the head nun reluctantly allows Cadron and his men to enter. At the same time, Isabel tries to hide Laurent to prevent Cadron's group from finding him. The other nuns quickly head to the armory to prepare their weapons and brace for the worst, including fighting Cadron's armed group. Isabel then confronts Cadron's group, who are inspecting every room in the monastery, to inform them that there are no men in the monastery. Unfortunately, Cadron does not believe Isabel and insists on searching a room where Laurent is hiding. Luckily, Cadron and his men are distracted by the sound of the zombie priest confined in another room. Seeing a zombie left alive, Cadron orders his men to kill it, but Laurent suddenly intervenes, trying to prevent them from killing the zombie because he does not want it to be destroyed. Cadron is shocked to discover a boy in the monastery and decides to take him to their base. Just as Cadron's group is about to take Laurent, Daryl attacks, leading to a shootout. The nuns, who were ready with their weapons, also joined a fight against the Pouvoir de Vivants group. One by one, the nuns fall into battle, but Cadron and his men are eventually overpowered by Daryl and the nuns. After the incident, the injured head nun asks Daryl to protect and take Laurent to the Nest. Thus, that night, Daryl, Laurent, Isabel, and another nun named Sylvie, who survived the monastery attack, set out on a journey to deliver Laurent to the Nest. After walking for a while, the four of them rest and build a campfire to warm themselves. During this time, Daryl makes an agreement with Isabel and the others that he will take Laurent to their destination if Isabel will later guide him to the port in southern Paris. Hearing this, Isabel agrees to Daryl's proposal. Switching to northern France, the leader of Pouvoir de Vivants, Marion Genet, is furious with her subordinates for failing to eliminate Daryl. Unexpectedly, Daryl had been captured by their group before, but managed to escape by sea and wash up on a beach. Marion admits she is worried that if Daryl is not eliminated soon, he will hinder all her plans. Switching to Isabel's past before the zombie outbreak spread worldwide, Isabel, who used to be a pickpocket in Paris, is seen approaching a lecherous man in a nightclub. After leading the man into her trap, Isabel skillfully steals his valuable possessions. One day, as Isabel walks across a bridge, she is startled by the screams of people around her and quickly leaves the area, unaware of what is happening. Upon arriving at the subway station, Isabel is shocked to see many people turn into zombies inside the train carriages. Terrified, she runs away from the station to return to her apartment. Not long after, Isabel is horrified to see Paris in chaos due to the sudden zombie outbreak. In the midst of the panic, Isabel's boyfriend, Quinn, arrives to pick her up and urges her to escape the chaos. In the car, Isabel asks Quinn to return to her home to fetch her younger sister, Lily. After Lily joins them, the three of them begin their journey out of Paris. Back in the present, Daryl and his three travel companions continue their journey north on horseback. When they arrive in a certain area, their horses become agitated, and soon after, several zombies appear, prompting Daryl and the others to abandon their horses and flee to safety. As a result, the four of them are forced to continue their journey on foot until they suddenly come under attack by arrows from a mysterious group. While Daryl tries to find out who attacked his group, he gets captured by the group, and they are all taken to a house where the mysterious group resides. After the group's leader, Lou, comes down to inspect Daryl and his companions, Isabel introduces herself as a nun traveling with Daryl, whom she calls the priest. Daryl is quite surprised to be introduced as a priest, but he remains calm and goes along with her story. Lou, upon learning that the captives are nuns and a priest, decides to release Daryl and the others and invites them to see the group's way of life. At that moment, Daryl discovers that the group consists only of children who survived the zombie outbreak and protect each other to stay alive. Lou then explains that they were initially cared for by an old woman referred to as Madame Du Bois, but since Du Bois fell ill, the children have had to fend for themselves. That night, Daryl and the others have dinner with the group, where Lou asks Daryl, as the priest, to lead the prayer before the meal. Daryl reluctantly leads the prayer, stating that everything happening to them might be a punishment for humanity's sins. After dinner, Lou informs Daryl about a man on horseback who now resides in a castle and has been stealing food supplies from the area. Lou then asks Daryl to help retrieve the stolen food supplies from the man. Hearing this, Daryl agrees, especially since he believes the man might also have medicines that could help Du Bois. In his plan, Daryl intends to steal the man's horse so he can quickly take Laurent to their destination. The scene returning to the past, where Isabel, still on her journey to find a safe place from a spreading zombie virus, is shocked to discover that Lily is pregnant and experiencing stomach pains. Isabel tries to comfort her sister, assuring Lily that they will find safety. Meanwhile, Quinn, who sees Lily as a burden, suggests to Isabel that they leave her behind. Unwilling to accept Quinn's attitude towards her sister, Isabel secretly takes the car keys and leaves him at a gas station. Back in the present, Daryl and Lou head towards the castle to find a man who stole Lou's group's food supplies. During their journey, Lou admits that she knows Daryl is not a priest. Nonetheless, Lou believes that Daryl is a good person who will help her group. Meanwhile, Laurent is being bullied by the local children for being socially awkward, especially since he has only ever been around women in the monastery. Feeling sad about the teasing, Laurent decides to leave and find some peace. A few years earlier, Isabel and Lily see an ambulance on the side of the road and decide to seek help as Lily is still in pain. Unexpectedly, zombies appear and injure her, prompting Isabel to hurriedly take the wounded Lily away from the road. At night, in the midst of a heavy rainstorm, Isabel enters a monastery on the outskirts of the city, seeking help from the residents to save Lily. The priest, who is not yet turned into a zombie, immediately helps Lily along with the nuns. Since Lily cannot be saved, they decide to deliver the baby she is carrying. After a difficult labor, Lily dies and turns into a zombie, while Isabel names her nephew Laurent. This event makes Laurent very special, because he was born from a mother infected with the zombie virus and is believed to be capable of saving the world. In the present, Laurent, walking alone in the forest, is shocked to see the horse released by Daryl earlier has been killed by zombies. Meanwhile, Daryl and Lou have reached the area around the castle, but they cannot enter because the bridge leading to the castle is damaged and filled with zombies below. They try to find another way to cross the bridge, and during their preparations, Daryl locks Lou in a room to keep her out of danger when they enter the castle. It doesn't take long for Daryl to get inside the castle, where he hears strange noises in the basement. Upon investigation, Daryl finds a boy named Harrison hiding in the castle. At the same time, the man living in the castle, whom Lou mentioned, tries to shoot Daryl from a distance. Because of this, Daryl asks Harrison to distract the man while he sneaks up on him. Fortunately, Daryl manages to corner the man, R.J. Gaines. When Gaines realizes that Daryl speaks English, he tries to calm Daryl, who is pointing a gun at him, and pleads not to be shot because they are both Americans. Ignoring Gaines, Daryl and Harrison take all of his food supplies back to Lou's base. Unexpectedly, the castle bridge they were crossing begins to collapse, causing several items to fall into the zombie-filled moat below. Gaines attempts to retrieve his food supplies, but falls into the moat and is attacked by dozens of zombies. At that moment, Daryl quickly saves Harrison, who almost falls as well. Unfortunately, this nearly causes Daryl to fall in the moat too, if not for Lou escaping from the room where she was locked and coming to his rescue just in time. Daryl, Lou, and Harrison finally return to the base, where they receive the sad news that Du Bois has passed away. At that moment, Daryl apologizes to everyone for lying about having medicine that could save Du Bois. Soon after, Lou and her companions bury Du Bois and pay their final respects to the old woman who had cared for them all this time. After that, Daryl encourages Lou to become the leader of the group and continue their lives. Sometime later, Daryl and his group bid farewell to continue their journey to the nest. Laurent initially refuses, as he has begun making friends there, but Isabelle convinces him that only he can save the world from a zombie virus outbreak. Meanwhile, Caudron, who survived the shootout at the monastery, returns and finds a map left behind by Daryl. With this map, Caudron discovers the destination of Daryl and Isabelle's journey. Back with Daryl and his group, they travel by horse-drawn carriage and arrive in Paris, stopping at a theater building where they plan to use a radio to communicate. Isabelle then directs the group to the location, knowing the building's owner, a musician, has a radio there. Daryl and Isabelle decide to enter the building while Sylvie stays outside to guard Laurent. Before entering, Daryl gives a rifle to Sylvie for protection in case of a zombie attack. A few moments after Daryl and Isabelle enter the building, they meet an old man who lives there and ask about a radio they can use to communicate. The old man then leads them to the room where the radio is kept. While Daryl and Isabelle are checking the radio, the old man, happy to have visitors, plays music to welcome them. The old man then takes Daryl and Isabelle to a theater room where tied-up zombies are playing musical instruments on stage. Because of this, Daryl and Isabelle are shocked by the old man's odd behavior and decide to quickly leave the building. At the same time, Sylvie tries to protect Laurent from an approaching zombie. Fortunately, Daryl arrives just in time to help Sylvie by shooting the zombie. However, the gunshot attracts dozens of other zombies. Seeing this, Daryl and the others decide to get on the horse-drawn carriage and move away from the theater building. Daryl and his group continue their journey until they are stopped by a community led by a man named Fallu. After Isabelle explains their mission, Fallu says that his group has been waiting for Laurent's arrival. Without hesitation, Fallu leads Isabelle's group to their headquarters. Upon arrival, Daryl asks if there's a radio he can use to communicate with his family in Alexandria, America, and to find information about a ship that can take him back to his hometown. Unfortunately, Fallu's group does not have a radio, as they only use pigeons for communication. However, Fallu mentions knowing someone who might be able to help Daryl, but warns that he will need money to pay this person. Hearing this, Isabelle, wanting to repay Daryl for escorting Laurent to the nest, decides to help him find a way to return to America. Switching to Caudron, who meets Marion at the base, he then informs his leader about the whereabouts of Daryl and his group, who are believed to have reached downtown Paris. At that moment, Caudron promises to bring Daryl before Marion soon. Shortly after, Marion takes Caudron to her laboratory, where she conducts experiments on zombies. In Paris, Isabel takes Daryl to her former apartment to retrieve her valuables that can be used to pay Fala's acquaintance. As they exit, they are confronted by several zombies, including a child zombie who was once Isabel's neighbor. Seeing this, Isabel asks Daryl not to kill the child zombie and urges him to leave the apartment area quickly. After meeting with Falu, Sylvie, and Laurent in a safe place, while Daryl and Isabel head to the marketplace that Fal mentioned. Passing through a corridor made of human skulls, they arrive at a bar to meet a man. Without hesitation, Isabel offers some of her illegal drugs on the condition that the man agrees to take Daryl to America. Unfortunately, the man responds poorly to her request by belittling Daryl. Enraged, Daryl beats the man until the bar owner, who turns out to be Quinn, arrives after hearing the commotion. At that moment, Quinn is shocked to see Isabel again, who had left him. Shortly after, Laurent approaches Isabel, forcing her to introduce him to Quinn. Upon seeing Laurent, Quinn quickly realizes that the boy before him is his son from his immoral actions with Lily. Daryl, seeing Isabel visibly upset by Quinn's presence, quickly urges her to leave. Isabel tries to stop Daryl because they haven't yet found someone who can help him return to America. At the same time, Cadron and his men arrive at the bar and attempt to attack Daryl, who is still there. To protect Isabel and the others, Daryl tries to divert Cadron's attention, while Isabel takes Laurent to a safer place. Using his wits, Daryl escapes to the rooftop and manages to evade Cadron. Unaware that the rooftop is decayed, Daryl falls into a sewer where dozens of zombies approach him. Shortly after, Laurent suddenly appears, causing Daryl to panic as the zombies threaten the boy. Unexpectedly, this turns out to be a dream, with Daryl submerged in the sewer water. Upon waking, Daryl fights off the attacking zombies and escapes. He then sets out to find Laurent and Isabel. Along the way, Daryl notices some Parisian residents carrying on with their lives as if no zombie outbreak is happening. Meanwhile, Cadron and Marion are interrogating Fala's men, seeking Daryl's whereabouts. Fala's men reveal that Daryl is escorting a special boy to a promised place. Marion, recognizing the connection to the prophecy about the Messiah, dismisses it as a myth, but Fala's men believe Laurent can save the world from a zombie outbreak. Intrigued, Marion and Cadron decide to pursue both Daryl and Laurent. Later, Daryl accidentally meets Falu's friend on a street. Fala's friend warns Daryl that Marion and Cadron are searching for him and Laurent. During their conversation, Marion's men's vehicle arrives. To protect Daryl, Fala's friend distracts Marion's men, but is ultimately shot dead by the thugs. A short while later, Daryl goes to Isabel's apartment where he feels relieved to find he's safe and sound. Since Isabel is separated from Laurent, they both plan to search for Lily's side. Meanwhile, Laurent is seen walking around the Eiffel Tower until he is startled by dozens of zombies behind a barricade built beneath the tower. As the zombies start to surround Laurent, Daryl and Isabel arrive to save him, who is hiding behind a corrugated metal roof. However, they get separated from Laurent again when a group of men suddenly abduct him. During the incident, Daryl and Isabel manage to capture one of Laurent's kidnappers named Norman for interrogation. After repeatedly forcing Norman to talk, Isabel begins to realize that Quinn is behind Laurent's kidnapping. Isabel's suspicion is confirmed as Laurent is now with Quinn. At that moment, Laurent reveals that he knows Quinn is his biological father, whom Isabel described as a brave man. During this encounter, Quinn asks Laurent to stay with him as a way to make amends for his wrongdoings towards him. Back to Daryl, who is frustrated because Norman provides no useful information. He eventually beats the kidnapper until Norman admits that he doesn't know Quinn's intentions for kidnapping Laurent. However, Norman is willing to tell Daryl and Isabel how to infiltrate the base where Quinn is hiding Laurent. Without wasting any time, Daryl and his companions start devising a plan to rescue Laurent by attacking Quinn's base, so Daryl can sneak in and save Laurent. Meanwhile, Marion and Cadron meet with Quinn to inquire about Laurent's whereabouts. To protect his son, Quinn tries to hide Laurent's location and promises to search for him to hand him over to the Pouvoir de Vivants group. Unbeknownst to Quinn, Daryl and Norman are using a secret passage to reach his base. Meanwhile, Fallu and his companions attack the front gate of Quinn's base to create a diversion. Back to Daryl and Norman in the tunnel. They are suddenly ambushed by other members of Quinn's gang. During the attack, Norman tries to escape from Daryl but falls, preventing him from continuing his flight. When Daryl catches up to Norman, he decides to leave him behind, where Norman is then attacked by zombies. A short while later, Daryl successfully rescues Laurent from the base, despite having to fight Quinn. When Daryl and Laurent regroup with Fallu and Isabel outside the base, she asks Daryl to take Laurent to the nest immediately. Isabel plans to meet with Quinn to ask for her former lover's help in ensuring Laurent's safe journey to the nest. Although Daryl initially disagrees with this plan, he has no choice but to leave Isabel. After saying goodbye, Daryl and Laurent continue their journey to the nest via a riverboat with Aslan. During the journey, Daryl asks Aslan about the nest, which will be their destination. Aslan describes the nest as a safe place for Laurent and confidently believes that he will live happily there. Aslan also admits his curiosity about how Daryl, an American, ended up in France. Some time ago, in America, Daryl, on his journey back to Alexandria, was forced to stop because he ran out of gas. Daryl then searched for fuel for his motorcycle until he met a man who agreed to give him gasoline on the condition that Daryl work at his place. With no other choice, Daryl accepted the job offer, and upon arriving at the worksite, he was tasked with capturing zombies. The more zombies Daryl could capture, the more gasoline he would receive. Wasting no time, Daryl started his job and managed to catch a significant number of zombies, which he then exchanged for gasoline. Back to the present, Daryl, Aslan, and Laurent rest in the forest before continuing their journey by boat the next day. The three of them then forage for food around the area to stock up for their boat journey. During this time, Daryl expresses his longing for his family in Alexandria. Switching to Isabel, who wakes up in Quinn's luxurious house. She is greeted by Quinn's servant who brings food to her room. Despite the luxurious meal from Quinn, Isabel does not touch her food at all, worried about Laurent's safety. Shortly after, Quinn arrives and informs her that he has heard news that Daryl and Laurent have successfully left France. Although Quinn has agreed to help Isabel monitor Laurent's journey, she does not fully trust Quinn and secretly searches for something she can use as a weapon. Meanwhile, Daryl and Aslan continue to talk about Daryl's story before he arrived in France. In his story, Daryl, while working as a zombie hunter, met a young man who was also trying to return to his family in California. Feeling sympathetic towards the young man, Daryl helped him by exchanging the gasoline he had earned for a number of zombies for the young man. Back in the present, Quinn and Isabel are having dinner together, during which Quinn confesses that he still loves Isabel and promises to become a better man for her. Isabel rejects Quinn's declaration of love because she is upset with him for collaborating with Marion's group. In a forest, while Daryl is recounting his past, he receives a call from his friend in America named Carol, who asks Daryl to come home. Before he can respond to Carol's request, the call abruptly cuts off, preventing Daryl from explaining what has happened to him. That night, Daryl and Laurent, who are resting, are awakened by the noise of approaching zombies. During the chaos, Aslan is severely injured by the sudden zombie attack. Realizing he won't survive, Aslan asks Daryl to ensure Laurent reaches the nest safely. After conveying his final wishes, Aslan passes away. The next morning, Daryl and Laurent are preparing to continue their journey by boat, but Daryl is shocked to find a boat missing, as its tether has been cut by Laurent. Daryl is angry with Laurent, who confesses that he did it because he doesn't want to go to the nest and be left alone there. As they continue their journey on foot, Daryl tries to reassure Laurent that everything will be fine at the nest. Despite this, Laurent remains reluctant to stay at the nest and even asks Daryl to take him to America. In the midst of their conversation, they hear the sound of a vehicle approaching from a distance, prompting them to hide. Unfortunately, Laurent accidentally drops his toy, causing a noise. Daryl then instructs Laurent to follow the river to the nest, while he stays behind to distract Marion's men who are coming. Laurent immediately follows Daryl's instructions to get away, while Daryl tries to buy time by confronting the thugs. At that moment, Marion's men demand that Daryl reveal Laurent's location, but Daryl remains silent, prompting them to treat him harshly. Laurent, who hasn't actually left, then comes out of hiding and asks Marion's men not to hurt Daryl. In the past, Daryl is shocked to see the young man he had helped and who was supposed to return to California had turned into a zombie. Daryl then suspects that someone deliberately turned the young man into a zombie, but as he tries to uncover the truth, he is eventually kicked out of his job. Back to Quinn and Isabel, who are invited to Marion's base. They see Fallu and his friends imprisoned there. Marion also reveals that she has captured Daryl and Laurent. At this point, Marion says she knows about Quinn's deception, while Isabel is reunited with a frightened Laurent, returning to the past because he tried to find out about his colleague who turned into a zombie. Daryl is detained and taken to a large ship carrying thousands of zombies from America. Some guards beat one of the prisoners, causing a commotion and put him in a zombie cage. At that moment, Daryl pretends to be sick to trick the guards, and when he is about to be put into the zombie cage, Daryl fights back, causing chaos on the ship to escape, including freeing a vicious zombie monster. In his escape attempt, Daryl decides to jump into the sea, eventually bringing him to the coast of France. At the same time, the ship's owner, who turns out to be Marion, is furious with Daryl and orders her men to hunt him down. In the present, Marion is very excited to see Daryl brought into an arena to fight zombies. Marion's men, who are watching, are also eager to see the spectacle. Soon, several zombies are injected with a substance that makes them aggressive, and they start attacking Daryl in the middle of the arena. Fortunately, Daryl is able to easily defeat all the zombies, which disappoints Marion. She then orders her men to chain Daryl and Quinn in the fighting arena. At that moment, the two of them have to face more zombies, which are more aggressive than before. Strangely, after the zombies are injected with a serum, they start attacking each other, allowing Daryl and Quinn to eliminate them. Seeing this, Marion is disappointed because her research to create a zombie army has failed. Daryl, frustrated, throws the head of a defeated zombie at Marion. Upset by Daryl's action, Marion orders her men to kill him and Quinn immediately. At the same time, Fallu and his friends suddenly start attacking Marion's group. Terrified, Marion flees with Laurent and Isabel and orders Cadron to finish off Daryl. Marion then locks Isabel and Laurent in a prison cell. Fortunately, Isabel manages to escape using a key she had secretly stolen earlier. Meanwhile, Quinn and Daryl hide from Marion's men. During this time, Daryl realizes that Quinn has been bitten by a zombie. Knowing he won't survive, Quinn asks Daryl to save Isabel and Laurent. As a result, Daryl is forced to cut off Quinn's wrist to free him from the chains, then goes to save Isabel as Quinn requested. After successfully escaping Marion's base, Daryl meets with Fallu and his friends, who then help him remove the handcuffs. Daryl then asks Fallu to distract Marion's troops while he plans to rescue Isabel and Laurent, who have managed to escape from the prison and are heading towards the exit. Shortly after, they encounter Daryl, who is there to help them, but they are blocked by a locked iron gate. As Isabel tries to find a way to open the gate, they are shocked to see Quinn, who has turned into a zombie and is about to attack Laurent and Isabel. To protect Isabel, Laurent is forced to kill his biological father. After this incident, Daryl, Isabel, Sylvie, and Laurent continue their journey to the nest using the car. During the trip, Laurent remains silent, contemplating his father's tragic death. After driving for a while, their car suddenly breaks down, forcing Daryl to fix the old vehicle. While helping Daryl check the car engine, Isabel mentions that Laurent has changed a lot since meeting him. Daryl, hearing this, doesn't seem to care much and continues working on the engine under the car. At the same time, Cadron and his men arrive and capture Isabel and the others. At that momentum, Isabel pleads with Cadron to release them, but her efforts seem futile as Cadron remains unmoved. Suddenly, Cadron kills all of his men, then urges Isabel and her friends to take Laurent to the nest, believing that Laurent can bring change to humanity. To ensure their trail is not tracked by Marion, Caudron asks Daryl to burn all evidence. Without wasting any time, Daryl and his group continue their journey until they arrive at the nest. All the inhabitants of the nest warmly welcome Daryl's group. The leader of the nest, named Losam, then meets with Daryl to ask about Aslan, who sacrificed himself during the journey to bring Laurent to the nest. Sometime later, Laurent is seen happily playing with children his age at the nest. On the other hand, Losam thanks Daryl for successfully bringing Laurent safely to the nest and promises to help him return to America. Additionally, Losam informs Daryl that he can leave using a ship that will arrive at the northern coast at dawn. Meanwhile, Caudron returns to the base and reports his troops' failure in pursuing Daryl's group due to an attack by a group of mysterious people. Marion does not believe this because she sees that Caudron is uninjured. Because of this, Marion suspects that Caudron killed his own men. Finally, Caudron admits that he could not kill Laurent because he believes Laurent can bring salvation to humanity. Marion then asks for the location of the nest, the destination of Daryl's group, but Caudron refuses to disclose it, angering her. At the nest, Isabel tries to persuade Daryl not to return to America, as it would sadden Laurent. However, Daryl remains determined to reunite with his family in Alexandria. Before dawn, Daryl heads to the northern coast to wait for the ship that will take him. On the way, he visits his grandfather's grave in France, and shortly after, he sees a ship in the distance. Unfortunately, the ship's noise attracts zombies, forcing Daryl to fight them off. After defeating the zombies and preparing to board the ship, Daryl is surprised to find Laurent waiting on a cliff to join him. Daryl is torn between staying or continuing his plan to return to his hometown. In the series finale, a man in America is seen riding his motorcycle on a deserted road until he realizes a car is following him. Annoyed, the man gets off his motorcycle and points a gun at the car, demanding the driver to come out. Unexpectedly, the driver is Carol, who is searching for Daryl. Carol then admits to following the man because she recognizes the motorcycle as Daryl's. She then forces the man into the car trunk at gunpoint and asks where he got her friend's motorcycle. The man replies that he bought the motorcycle from a nearby location. Without hesitation, Carol takes Daryl's motorcycle and leaves the man behind. Moral lesson from a story: when running from zombies, never trust a map left behind by your enemy. It might lead you straight into a musical zombie trap. And remember, when rescuing someone from zombie kidnappers, be prepared for unexpected revelations about their parentage.